All right, so you know those times when you feel like your brain is stuck on dial-up speed, but you desperately need it to be fiber optic?
Totally. Like trying to stream a movie on a 20-year-old computer.
Exactly. And it feels like every productivity guru out there is promising to unlock our hidden mental potential.
Right. Like there's this secret genius just waiting to be unleashed if we could only remember where we put the key.
Precisely. Which is why I was both excited and a tad skeptical when this book, Stay Sharp, landed on my virtual doorstep. You're the one who sent this our way, right? So clearly, you're intrigued by this whole idea of banishing mental laziness. What grabbed your attention?
Well, for me, it was the fact that Cole doesn't just offer these surface-level tips and tricks. He actually dives into the psychology behind why we get mentally stuck in the first place. It's like he's giving us a backstage pass to our own minds.
Okay, see, that's what hooked me too. He doesn't sugarcoat it. He comes right out and says, those mindless scrolling habits we all indulge in. Yeah, they're literally shrinking our brains.
Yeah, that's a hard truth bomb right there. But he backs it up with science, comparing our brains to muscles that atrophy if we don't challenge them.
Ouch, mental atrophy. I think I just felt a brain cell twitch.
Before we go on with the podcast, I invite you to download the free bundle, which contains the ebook and an executive summary of all the chapters with the key takeaways. Click on the first link in the description to claim your free bundle now and maximize your learning potential. Now it's free, but it won't be for long, so make sure to grab it while you can.
But that's also what's so motivating about his message. If we're aware of the problem, we can actually do something about it.
Exactly. And it's not just about like being able to win at trivia night or remember where you put your keys, although that's a bonus. Cole argues that a sharper mind can actually lead to better intuition.
Now you're speaking my language. So it's not just about logic and analysis, but also strengthening that gut feeling.
Exactly. It's like you're fine-tuning your inner compass so you can navigate life's decisions with more clarity and confidence.
I love that analogy. But okay, let's get practical. How do we actually start flexing those mental muscles?
Well, Cole dedicates an entire chapter to this concept of mind awareness, which sounds way more intimidating than it actually is. It's really just about...
Is it like that whole mindfulness thing everyone's always talking about? Because I've tried meditating, and let's just say my mind is not exactly a tranquil oasis.
You know, it is connected to mindfulness, but it's also a bit more specific than that. Cole is really talking about this idea of metacognition.
Meta what now? Okay, you have to break that down for me.
Yeah, it's one of those words that sounds way more complicated than it needs to. Basically, it just means thinking about your own thinking.
So like becoming aware of those times when you're spiraling into a wordy fest about something you have zero control over.
Precisely. It's about being able to hit the pause button on those automatic thought patterns that can send us down unproductive rabbit holes.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. But how do we actually do that? Because my brain sometimes feels like a runaway train.
Well, Cole has this really cool exercise called thought monitoring that I've found really helpful. Have you ever tried it?
Can't say that I have. Is it like brain surgery? Because I might need a medical professional for that.
No, nothing quite so dramatic. It's actually quite simple. You simply observe your thoughts without judgment, almost like you're watching clouds drift by.
Okay, that sounds doable. Although I'm not sure my inner monologue is always cloud watching material.
Well, the key is to approach it with a sense of curiosity rather than judgment.
Okay, that makes sense. No judgment, just observation. Like a fly on the wall of my own mind.
Exactly.
Before we continue, I want to remind you that you can always find the free audiobook version of this book on the main Grow to the Top channel. Click on the second link in the description to start listening now.
And you might be surprised by what you discover about your own thought patterns.
You know what? This actually reminds me of something that happened a while back. I was trying to make a decision and I was so caught up in my own head.
Oh, I'd love to hear about it. Sometimes a real life example is worth 1,000 explanations.
Right. Okay, so picture this. I got this amazing job offer, but it meant relocating, uprooting my whole life.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a big one.
Huge. And my brain was stuck in this loop of what ifs. What if I hate the new city? What if it ruins my career? Total analysis paralysis.
Been there.
But I just read that chapter on mind awareness, so I thought, why not give this thought monitoring thing a shot?
Okay, so you're trying to observe those anxious thoughts without letting them take over.
Exactly. And it was wild. Like, I realized that most of my fears stem from this one underlying assumption I hadn't even realized I was making.
Ooh, interesting. Which was?
That I had to have everything figured out perfectly before making a change. That any risk was a potential catastrophe.
Then that, my friend, is a classic example of how those hidden assumptions can hold us back without us even realizing it.
Totally. Cole talks about assumptions being like the invisible scaffolding that shapes our thinking. And I was like, dude, he's reading my mind.
It's such a powerful metaphor. We often go through life operating on these unexamined beliefs that we've picked up along the way.
It's like we're building our mental houses on foundations we've never even bothered to inspect.
Precisely. And then we wonder why we keep ending up with leaky roofs and cracked walls.
Okay, too real. So, to continue this construction metaphor, how do we start reinforcing those shaky foundations?
Well, that's where chapter 3 comes in. Challenge assumptions. Cole argues that until we're willing to shine a light on those hidden beliefs, we're going to stay stuck in these mental ruts.
Because our brains are wired to take the easy route, right? It's less effort to stick with what's familiar, even if it's not serving us.
Exactly. He calls it our brain's energy-saving mode. Like, why expend precious mental energy questioning things when we can just coast on autopilot?
Makes sense, but not always helpful in the long run.
Not at all. And that's where all sorts of biases can sneak in.
Like that confirmation bias thing he talks about.
Yeah.
Where we only pay attention to information that confirms what we already believe.
Yes. He gives this great example about...
Was it the one about political polarization?
Yes. It's like people on opposite sides of an issue can look at the same evidence and come to completely different conclusions because they're filtering it through their pre-existing beliefs.
Which is kind of terrifying when you think about it. It's like we're all living in these separate realities shaped by our own biases.
It's definitely a challenge in today's world where we're constantly bombarded with information from all sides, but becoming aware of those biases is the first step towards overcoming them.
Okay, so we're aware of our assumptions, we're being mindful of our thoughts.
Yeah.
How do we actually put this into practice? I mean, life is busy, and I can't exactly meditate on a mountaintop every time I need to make a decision.
I hear you. And that's where chapter 4, active engagement, comes in. Cole argues that it's not enough to just passively absorb information. We have to actively engage with it.
Okay, so less scrolling, more. What? Mental push-ups.
Haha, I like the way you think. He actually compares it to working out, like you wouldn't expect to get ripped by just watching other people lift weights.
Touché. You got to put in the work. So what's the mental equivalent of hitting the gym?
He's a huge advocate for mindfulness.
Okay, so back to meditation. Because we already established that my mind is more like a...
Hold on. I know you're not a fan of traditional meditation, but Cole's talking about mindfulness in a broader sense. It's about bringing that same quality of presence and focus to everyday tasks.
Okay, so less about chanting Om and more about...
More about being fully present when you're reading a book, having a conversation, or even just eating a meal.
Okay, that I can get behind. Because let's be honest, how often do we actually taste our food when we're shoveling it down while scrolling through our phones?
Exactly. It's like we're missing out on the richness of our own experiences because we're so busy multitasking that we're not really present for any of it.
Okay, guilty as charged. So mindfulness in everyday life, check. What other mental workout tips does he have up his sleeve?
He's also a big fan of the Pomodoro technique.
The what now? Is that some kind of fancy Italian pasta dish? Because if so, I'm all ears.
Haha, not quite. Although I do appreciate a good pasta dish.
Who doesn't?
But the Pomodoro technique is actually a time management method that involves working in focused bursts, usually 25 minutes, followed by a short break.
Okay, so instead of trying to power through a task for hours on end and ending up mentally exhausted, we're breaking it down into manageable chunks.
Exactly. And those short breaks are key. It seems counterintuitive, but giving your brain a chance to rest and recharge actually helps you be more productive in the long run.
It's like interval training for your brain. Love it. Okay, so we're challenging assumptions, engaging actively, but how do we make this a sustainable lifestyle change? Because let's be real, I've been down the self-improvement rabbit hole before, and it's easy to fall back into old habits.
I hear you. And that's where the power of habits comes in, which thankfully Cole dedicates an entire chapter to.
Music to my ears. Because we all know that old adage, motivation gets you started, but habit keeps you going, or something like that.
Exactly. And Cole breaks down the science of habit formation in a way that's both fascinating and empowering. He says most people misunderstand the habit loop.
Oh, really? I thought it was pretty straightforward. You have a craving, you perform a routine, you get a reward.
Right. That's the basic idea, but Cole argues that most people focus on the wrong part of the equation. They think it's all about willpower, but...
Wait, willpower isn't the magic bullet? My whole self-improvement strategy is built on willpower.
I hate to break it to you, but willpower is a finite resource. It's like a muscle that gets tired after repeated use.
Okay, that would explain a lot about my daily struggles with the snooze button.
Exactly. So instead of relying on willpower alone, Cole says we need to strategically design our environment for success.
Okay, so less just do it and more.
More like set yourself up for success. He talks about this concept of habit stacking, which is essentially piggybacking a new habit onto an existing one. That's so smart. Like instead of trying to overhaul your entire routine overnight, you're just making these small incremental changes that are more likely to stick.
Exactly. He gives the example of wanting to start a daily journaling practice. Instead of putting pressure on yourself to write pages and pages, he suggests simply jotting down a few sentences every morning while you drink your coffee.
Love it. It's all about those tiny wins that add up over time. Okay, my mind is officially blown. Challenging assumptions, actively engaging, building good habits. We're well on our way to becoming mental ninjas. What's next on this journey to mental sharpness?
Well, next up, we're going to dive into the fascinating world of creativity. Get ready to unlock your inner innovator because Chapter 6 is all about unleashing creativity. Okay, sign me up. This is where I think a lot of people, myself included, might hit a mental roadblock. We tend to think of creativity as this elusive talent that you either have or you don't, like some magical gift bestowed upon a select few.
Right, and Cole totally dismantles that myth. He argues that everyone has the potential for creative thinking, and he offers a toolbox of techniques to help us tap into it.
Okay, I'm intrigued, but also a little intimidated. Like, what if my inner creative spark is more of a flicker?
Cole would say it's about fanning those flames no matter how small they may seem. And one of the tools he recommends is this concept of lateral thinking.
Lateral thinking. Okay, that sounds suspiciously like some kind of mental gymnastics routine. I mean, part of me is intrigued, but the other part of me is like, wait a minute, is this going to require like a whole whiteboard and like colored markers?
Well, it could involve props, if that's your style.
Okay, maybe not a whole whiteboard, but I'm definitely getting out my trusty notebook for this one.
I love it. That's the spirit. But seriously, Cole uses this really fun example in the book to illustrate lateral thinking.
Lay it on me. I'm ready for a mental workout.
So imagine you're trying to improve the safety of a busy intersection.
Okay, got it. Lots of cars, pedestrians, probably some confusing traffic signals happening.
Exactly. The obvious solution might be adding more traffic lights or maybe a crosswalk.
Right, those are like the go-to solutions.
But a lateral thinker might come up with something totally unexpected, like...
Like what? Tell me you have a good one.
Okay, get this. What if instead of adding more signals, you actually removed all the traffic lights?
Wait, what? Now that sounds dangerous.
Right. It seems counterintuitive, but that's the point of lateral thinking. It forces you to look beyond those default solutions and consider possibilities you might have otherwise dismissed.
Okay, I see where you're going with this. By shaking things up, you force people to be more aware, more cautious. Because they can't just rely on those external cues anymore.
Exactly. It's like that old saying, necessity is the mother of invention. Sometimes we need to create a bit of chaos to unlock those truly innovative solutions.
Mind officially blown. Okay, that's some next level problem solving right there.
Yeah.
But let's be real, we don't always have time for these mental gymnastics routines in the middle of a busy day. How do we cultivate this kind of creative thinking on the fly?
That's the beauty of it. It's not so much about setting aside specific time for creativity, but rather cultivating a mindset of curiosity and playfulness in everything you do.
So it's less about like scheduling a brainstorming session and more about approaching life with a sense of wonder.
Exactly. Like, what if instead of seeing every problem as an obstacle, you saw it as an opportunity for a creative solution?
I love that. It's about shifting our perspective from this is a problem to this is an interesting challenge.
Precisely. And Cole would argue that when we approach life with that kind of open-minded curiosity, we unlock a world of possibilities.
That's like that Einstein quote. The important thing is not to stop questioning.
Exactly. Curiosity is the fuel for creativity. And when we combine that creative mindset with the decision-making framework he lays out in Chapter 7, Decision Mastery, we become unstoppable.
Okay, tell me more about this decision-making framework, because let's be honest, sometimes my decision-making process feels more like a coin toss than a strategic plan.
I can relate. But Cole argues that most of us fall into one of two extremes when it comes to decision making. We either overthink everything to the point of paralysis, or we rely too heavily on gut feelings, which can be unreliable.
Okay, so we need to find that sweet spot between overthinking and impulsivity.
Exactly. And that's where his wrap model comes in.
Wrap. Now, are we talking about like a sandwich wrap? Because if so, I'm already sold.
Not quite, although I do appreciate a good sandwich wrap. This wrap stands for widen your options, reality test your assumptions, attain distance before deciding, and prepare to be wrong.
Okay, that's a mouthful. But I'm already intrigued. Breaking it down, though, widen your options. That seems pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah.
But how do we reality test our assumptions?
It's about taking those initial assumptions we talked about earlier and putting them through a rigorous vetting process.
So like playing devil's advocate with ourselves, challenging those biases before they lead us astray.
Exactly. And attaining distance before deciding, that's huge. Because often we make our worst decisions when we're feeling rushed or pressured.
So it's about giving ourselves the time and space to make a clear-headed decision.
Precisely. And then that last one, prepare to be wrong. That's such a powerful reminder that none of us are infallible.
It's like he's giving us permission to embrace imperfection, to learn from our mistakes.
And to approach decision-making as a continuous learning process rather than this high-stakes game, we have to win perfectly every time.
Okay, that's a game changer right there. Giving ourselves permission to be wrong. That alone could revolutionize my decision-making. But, so we've got all these amazing tools and techniques. How do we actually make them stick? Because let's be real, life can get messy, and we can easily fall back into old habits.
That's where Chapter 8, Mindful Living, comes in. And it's all about taking those mental sharpness strategies we've been talking about and weaving them into the fabric of our everyday lives.
So it's not just about isolated exercises or techniques, but a more holistic approach to living with intention.
Exactly. It's about finding those little pockets of mindfulness throughout the day. It's not always about meditating for an hour. It's about bringing that same quality of presence to those mundane tasks we usually do on autopilot.
Like brushing your teeth or waiting in line at the grocery store. Those little moments can become opportunities to practice mindfulness.
Precisely. And by bringing that awareness to even the smallest actions, we create a ripple effect that impacts every aspect of our lives.
So to wrap it all up, we arrive at the final chapter, Beyond Limits, which honestly gives me chills just saying it. What's Cole's grand finale message? What's the takeaway, the big takeaway from all of this?
He leaves us with this really powerful image. He compares our minds to these vast, unexplored territories with limitless potential.
I love that because so often we limit ourselves with these self-imposed boundaries.
Exactly. But Cole's message is clear. There are no limits to what we can achieve when we commit to cultivating our mental sharpness.
And it's not about becoming some kind of superhuman genius either. It's about embracing the journey of lifelong learning.
Absolutely. And remembering that even the smallest steps taken in the direction of mental growth can have a profound impact on our lives.
So to everyone listening, if you're feeling that mental fog rolling in, remember that you have the power to choose a different path. A path of intention, curiosity, and continuous growth.
Well said. And that's a wrap on this deep dive into Stay Sharp.
Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and stay sharp, my friends.